Now, when we think of the Niger Delta, we often think of oil, but the region sits atop another often overlooked source of national prosperity, the blue economy. From its vast coastline and inland waterways to fisheries, marine transport, tourism, and renewable ocean energy, the region holds enormous potential to drive inclusive growth, create jobs, and diversify Nigeria's economy beyond hydrocarbons. According to the Tinubu administration, developing the blue economy in the Niger Delta is not just an economic opportunity, it is a chance to reimagine development in a region long burdened by environmental degradation and underinvestment. It says that with the right policies, infrastructure, and environmental safeguards, a thriving maritime economy could expand livelihoods for coastal communities, strengthening food security, boosting regional trade, and reducing the conflict pressures that have historically accompanied resource extraction. Well, to this end, the Niger Delta Blue Economy Investment Summit is set to take place in Akwa Ibom State next month. Its co-convener is Dr. Uche Igwe, and he joins me now on the line from Port Harcourt. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, Nigeria often talks about the blue economy. I mean, it now has a Ministry of Blue Economy. That suggests some seriousness behind the talk. But on the ground in the Niger Delta where you are, is there any sense at all that this is more than just a policy slogan?
Yes, because there's a lot of enthusiasm to ensure that there's a trickle-down effect on the policy architecture already set by the Tinubu administration. As you know, Charles, there is now the Niger Delta, the national policy on marine and blue economy. And this is the policy anchor of federal government. And regional agencies like the Niger Delta Development Commission and the South-South Development Commission, and in fact, so many state governments in the Niger Delta are now very willing to draw on this policy and operationalize them in the region. And that is exactly what we want to do with the Niger Delta Blue Economy Investment Summit next month.
Well, I mean, we're going to come to your summit later on, but how can investors be expected to commit capital to coastal industries when piracy, oil theft, and to some extent community unrest still define the operating environment in the Niger Delta?
Just that's the reason why we are convening. We are going to come together and have a coordinated approach to first acknowledging the challenges and collectively tackle them. We know about insecurity in the region. It's not as it used to be, but however, we know that no investor, whether local or international, will be willing to invest in a region that has, insecurity challenges. So as I speak to you, there are efforts to ensure that the right stakeholders come to the summit. We want to come together and have an integrated approach to tackling insecurity, understanding that when that is done, we can now stretch our hands and seek for investment, be it local or international. So security is at the front burner of what we want to discuss in the Niger Delta. We know efforts are going on, but we want to ensure that they are harmonized, they are coordinated, so that we can have better results and impact.
And well, obviously, security, as you said, is a persisting issue which has to be dealt with. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere. But what guarantees exist that Niger Delta communities will benefit directly through jobs, skills, ownership, rather than watching wealth extracted offshore or onshore yet again and extracted away from them?
Yes, Charles, I heard when you spoke about inclusive development, and I want to give you an instance. Every year, Nigerian government spends $1.2 billion importing fish into the country. And you can imagine the amount of foreign exchange that is at a time when there are efforts to stabilize the Naira. So what we are thinking is that through the summit, through the master plan, there is an integrated approach to develop our fishing industry, develop local capacity and capability, and also develop the regulatory architecture. We don't want a situation where Nigerian territorial waters will be a free-for-all arena for all kinds of external forces to come and do fishing. With the summit, with the kind of approach we want to take, that will be a thing of the past. And what it means is that these communities you talk about will be supported to develop the capabilities they need to make sure that they do this fishing in a sustainable manner. And maybe in the near future, the $1.2 billion that the government spends annually could probably come down to maybe 2 million or 3 million. And that way, it impacts directly. Imagine if that kind of money gets into our communities one way or the other. And as you know, there are several other industries, the drying, the distribution, the cold stores and everything that come with the chain that will also create jobs. So we're not talking about the extraction as it used to be. We're talking about a targeted, calculated departure in an industry which has been there, by the way, but which, with renewed efforts, with the right policy architecture, there will be trickle-down effect and there will be job creation in the region. Just we're thinking about at least 50 to 100,000 jobs annually created by a sustainable approach to blue economy, especially to fishing and sustainable fishing in the region, and aquaculture and other related areas.
And you mentioned a hot second ago the sort of regulatory framework. Is Nigeria's regulatory framework for maritime, for fisheries that you were talking about, shipping, offshore energy, clear and predictable enough to attract long-term investment, or does it need to be tinkered with, a sort of work in progress as you try to organize this summit?
We are not we're not there yet, Charles. It is a work in progress, just as you said. But I think that what is most important is that many regulatory agencies have what I call jurisdictional challenges. There's a bit of contest here and there about who is doing what. They may be doing them well, but because there are silos that do exist, we think that there needs to be an effort towards coordination so that impact can be maximized. And that is one of the things our summit will be talking about. We want a situation where each regulatory agency could discuss and dialogue with their sister agencies so that there will be collaboration and coordination rather than competition and contestation.
I have to say that I have driven through parts of the Niger Delta, and it always, if you like, bled my heart, the absolute waste of tourism potential there. I mean, I drove through places like from Port Harcourt all the way to Bayelsa, for example. I mean, when you drive through those coastal roads, I mean, it's just so, it reminds me of places in the Caribbean and Jamaica, where you could absolutely transform those places and turn them into sort of tourist paradises. But let's talk about another issue that has been a problem, because given decades of environmental damage in the Niger Delta, how do you convince skeptics that blue economy projects won't simply repeat those sort of old extractive mistakes under a greener label?
Yes, I am an optimist, Charles, and I can tell you that the tourism potentials you talk about is not something we will ignore in this summit. If you go to places, in addition to the Bayelsa states that you talked about, If you go to places like Andoni, local government in River State, and even Opobo, where the current governor of River State comes from, or if you go to a place like Ibuno in Akwa Ibom State, you will be marveled the level of coastline and the kind of beaches. I mean, things like you said, you can find in the Caribbean. I was in Cape Town a couple of months back, and I said, look, listen, why can't we make a Cape Town out of Andoni? Why can't we make a Cape Town out of Ibuno? And I think that what it needs is the right political will and the right policy. Now, when you talk about, you talked about environmental pollution, as you know that, of course, the extractive industry came with its consequences, but then, you know, the federal government is doing their bit in terms of the cleanup. We are not there yet. Some of these, pollution, it took a while, and of course, it will also take a while to clean up. But again, it is important to say that the Ministry of Environment, the Hydrocarbon Pollution Regulatory Agency, they will be on the table at this summit, because we understand that the blue economy in the Niger Delta especially will not be complete until the footprints of pollution in the region that happened with the oil exploration and associated impact and consequences are cleaned up. It is not going to happen, very swiftly, but that process is on, and it is integrated in the approach we're taking. And we believe that side by side also, in an interesting way, cleanup of the Niger Delta will also create its own jobs. So we're talking about bioremediation, for instance, where microorganisms can be treated to be used to sort of eat up the crude oil and everything. And I can tell you, Charles, there are fantastic jobs that can be created. So our people can also be involved in the cleaning up of our rivers and creeks as part of the blue economy. And it brings its own employment opportunities. So yeah, we will be doing the investment, but we're also going to be cleaning up, so that at the end of the day, while we get jobs from fishing, aquaculture, we also create jobs for the young people learning how to clean in a sustainable way.
Right, and talking about your investment summit, who are you targeting to actually put up the money for all this? Is it the government? Is it multilateral lenders? Is it private capital? And what risk is each side prepared to carry?
Well, we have a blend of approaches. Interestingly, we have companies within the country who are already very supportive of the work we're doing. We have Caverton Marine, for instance. We have Target One, companies that are already working on maritime-related issues, maritime safety, building passenger boats, who are ready to invest not only in the summit. I mean, I have commitment, for instance, from some of these companies that not only want to invest in the summit and become partners, they also want to invest in the region. They are keen. So we have domestic investors. We also have a lot of donors who are already talking to us and are willing to come to the summit to sort of, get a bit of a sense of our seriousness and political will. As you know, political will is everything in this. And I think that when we get it right sufficiently for our indigenous investors to invest and our donor partners to invest, then it will become attractive for international partners. Even though they will be at the summit, they will be at the table, I think that if I'm in their shoes, this will be a bit of a scoping visit to understand the seriousness, the level of commitment, the level of coordination, and to also test the waters, whether indigenous companies like the Caverton of this world, like the Target One of this world, are willing to commit their resources. It is only when we, Charles, domestic persons and investors within the country, and even investors within the Niger Delta region, are willing to commit their own resources, that is the only way that international investors can find the Niger Delta attractive. So we have to do it ourselves. We have that approach that we have to also ask our own people to come to the summit, to come understand how serious stakeholders are in terms of walking the talk going forward. Understanding that oil is a non-renewable resource, we have blue economy for life. So if you want to invest, maybe in the next 30, 40 years, invest in oil. But if you want to invest and reap your benefits forever, you invest in blue economy. And that's our approach.
So let me ask you this then. I mean, 5 years from now, let's say 2031, what would success look like in the Niger Delta's blue economy, and what would count as a failure in your assessment?
Well, I'm an optimist. Success will look like a coordinated arena where people can know who to go to do what. We have a time when there is a master plan, functional master plan that gives you a bird's eye view or helicopter view, if you like, of where the opportunities are and what to do to take advantage of them in a sustainable manner. A situation where also we have what we call the Niger Delta Blue Economy Investment Funds. Often people have the right ideas, they don't have the resources. We recognize that, and we're thinking that it is important that we get together some sort of funds to leverage our local industries and local persons who have the right ideas or may not have the right funds. So I believe that in the next 5 years, those who have the right ideas to act and make progress in the blue economy arena, regardless of how small or big, we know where to find their resources. And what I also want to say, Charles, is that more than 11.5 billion naira is being destroyed, is being lost annually to flooding. I also want to say that the success I want to see in the next 5 years is the kind of situation where every year we are not working to do emergencies about flooding so that coastal communities are washed away. We want a situation where in the next 5 years, prevention of flooding rather than tackling flooding through emergency will be something that is possible in the Niger Delta. When I go to Lagos just and I see a co-Atlantic city, as imperfect as that would be, I sort of begin to think that a co-Atlantic city can be replicated in the Niger Delta. Many people have forgotten that many years ago, many years ago, the Beach, as we used to call it, used to be very angry, and the waves and the flooding will be all over that street. If you go there now, that place is transformed. So what I believe is that with the kind of approach, very aggressive approach we do have, in the next 5 years, 1 or 2 spots in the Niger Delta, those communities that we used to see annually ravaged by flooding, could be transformed with a professional and scientific preventive approach. So that is what success looks like for me, a situation where through all of these interventions, jobs, sustainable jobs will be created, and hopefully poverty will be reduced in line with the Bola Tinubu administration's already set policy agenda, which of course you referred to.
Right, okay, well, let's hope the blue economy realistically provides an economic alternative to oil for Niger Delta communities, and you're not just overselling it as a silver bullet, keeping in mind that Donald Trump in the United States is more of a fossil fuel champion, and it seems like people are much more likely to be boosting that industry in the Niger Delta because there'll be money coming into it than they would be looking for other sustainable means. In any case, we will have to watch and see. Yeah. I want to thank you very much indeed. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Dr. Uche Igwe is the co-convener of the Niger Delta Blue Economy Investment Summit, which is set to take place in Akwa Ibom State next month, and he has been talking to me on the line from Port Harcourt. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja and Port Harcourt, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.